doing things that you hope are striking the right notes with the NFL, and all of a sudden you got to switch gears to this is your job now. Is that an easy transition to make or a difficult transition to make?
I think from after the combine and up until this point, you're doing everything you can to prepare for it, and as a rookie you'll have to adjust. But I think I've done everything I could and everything I can to allow myself to hit the ground running when I got here. So.
I think you said after you were drafted, what you feel like separates you is how hard you worked to get here, and that you had been through some adversity, some ups and downs. What looking back, what was kind of the hardest thing you had to overcome in the last few years to get to the point where you're practicing in the NFL?
I mean, really, changing positions after 3 years in college. Going from after playing receiver for 3 seasons and then trying to pick up on corner, which I never really played before. I think that's just about one of the hardest things you can do, and I think what separated me and allowed me to get to this point was how hard I worked at it. Obviously my athleticism would help me a lot, but I didn't want to be the guy that had to rely on his athleticism. I wanted to be technical, and I wanted to know everything that I had to know. So
when you're at cornerback, can you think like a wide receiver, and does that help you defend?
Absolutely. Taking that knowledge I learned from playing offense to the defensive side helps me pre-snap pick up on things that the offense might be doing. So I definitely use that to my advantage as well.
What has been the biggest learning curve in that transition for you, though?
I think just getting comfortable with the technique. Like I said, I never really played the position, so I was kind of learning it as I was going. But really emphasizing the techniques at cornerback. But I take a lot of strides, and I think I'm in a really good spot now with continuing to learn more too.
Who initiated that? Was it you to them, or the coaches to you, and how did that go?
It was Coach Campbell, our head coach, brought it up to me after we had some cornerbacks transfer away. So. He knew with my athleticism, I was going to work hard and, wanted to see where it could go, and I was all for it. I wanted to see what I could do with it too.
What's been your first impressions of the rest of the rookie class, and kind of what are some things that you have been able to do to build the little bit of camaraderie you do have so far?
Everyone's excited. There's a lot of juice going around. Everyone, we made it to NFL, but now the thing is to stay here and make your mark here. So, everyone's flying around. Everyone's got really good energy, and we've only been here for 2 days, but you're already starting to form those relationships that you can lean on those guys. So I think it's really special, and I think with over this next weekend, we're going to keep growing.
Darien, did you see Pete? He was practicing his back pedal coverage in warm-ups. Did you see that? What do you think of him bringing that kind of enthusiasm to rookie minicamp?
I think it's awesome to have your head coach out there giving you that one-on-one or with the other cornerbacks giving you that kind of those tips with his gloves on. He's out there working on his press. So it's funny, but I really appreciate it, and to see that kind of energy in rookie minicamp this early in the process is awesome.
Was he talking to you when he was showing that?
He was me and the other corners. Yeah, it wasn't just me, but yeah.
Did you know his reputation for kind of developing defensive backs before you got drafted here, going into the draft process? This kind of been a crash course on his history here lately.
Yeah, everyone knows, what he did in Seattle with Richard Sherman, that Legion of Boom. But, I was a big fan of Pete Carroll. I grew up a USC fan, so I was watching, him in the early to mid-2000s with USC. So for me, it's kind of surreal, to have this kind of come full circle for me. Now he's my head coach in the NFL. I grew up watching USC, so it's just crazy.
Are there any of the defensive backs that he worked with in Legion of Boom that maybe you're trying to model yourself after?
It kind of caught him at the end of his tenure in Seattle, but Tariq Woolen, Richard Sherman's very similar, both tall, long guys, but I think athletically I fit a little bit more Tariq than Richard Sherman, but just looking to take all the coaching I can to be to get to the level of those guys.
There's talk on social media about wanting to buy tickets to see you defend Dante Thornton, another pretty tall, fast guy. When you look at somebody that big and that fast, kind of like yourself, what do you see when you see Dante Thornton?
I think he gives that unique challenge. He's not just big. He's big and he can run. So you've really got to be on point. For the fast guys, you got to get your hands on them. Try to disrupt the timing of the route, but we're one day in. I'm excited to keep going against him and Jack, and iron sharpening iron.
You talk about being a fan of USC growing up with Pete Carroll. Like, what is that transition like? I mean, you said it's kind of jarring a little bit, but what is it like? Oh, that guy's my coach. Like, he's not some guy watching TV. Like, he's coaching me now.
Yeah. I think it's just now you're here. So you can't get too caught up in it, and I don't think I have. But it was certainly draft night. It was surreal talking to him on the phone, but now he's my coach, and just got to do what he says and take all the coaching I can get.
How do you kind of balance mentally of knowing that a lot of corners that are in this position have a lot more experience than you, but you have so much more room to grow, right? Like, how do you kind of balance that mentally?
I think it's, obviously I know that my best football is still ahead, but I'm here and I've done everything to put myself in this position. And, I was drafted in the 3rd round, and, I'm still learning, so for me it gives me confidence to know that I've been able to make it, but I'm still learning, I'm still growing,
When you talk about that switch from receiver to corner, how much, I guess, more appreciation you might have for a guy like Travis Hunter who did them both at that level?
He's a special player. It's not easy to do. Playing one side of the ball is hard enough, but to do play offense and defense at an elite level, you got to be pretty special. So, I think it's really awesome.
You know, Lobby, you do that here?
One, guys, by the way.
What you say?
Lobby, you do that here?
We'll see. That's not up to me. I'll do it, but we'll see.
All right.